Hi, this is Geoff Welch with This Tiny Empire, and I'm really excited to share with you an interview I just did with Sabrina Stoffregen, the director of Intel's brand ambassadors. She spoke at a PRSA luncheon here in Fairbanks last month in September, and she just did a great job talking about this program that exists at Intel where they enlist employees to be ambassadors for the organization, and she'll talk more about that in the interview. But I knew that this would be something great to share, and that you guys are almost definitely the ambassadors that exist in your organizations. And so I was very happy to be able to connect the dots on that. There was a technical blip at the beginning. Technology is not always perfect, and so I apologize that the very beginning of the interview is clipped just a little bit, but hopefully it doesn't impair it too much. She's an amazing lady, and I super appreciate the fact that she took the time to talk to me this morning. So enjoy.
So we've launched about 2 years ago now, and we're getting tons of momentum. We have 307 ambassadors worldwide.
Wow, that's amazing. And so you do that within the company at Intel, but you also travel around and you speak about that and you share this sort of what the work you've done has meant to Intel.
I do, yeah. I've actually just last week I was in New York and I spoke at a social media conference,
Yeah.
PivotCon, and a couple of weeks before that I was in Atlanta speaking at Social Media Shakeup.
Yeah.
So I've had a beautiful opportunity to talk to lots of different kinds of people all around the globe.
That
So
is awesome. So tell me, can you describe what it means to be a brand ambassador when you're talking about finding these ambassadors in a company? What is that person? What qualities do they have?
yeah, so when I think about ambassadors, really they're the heart and soul of our brand, and you'll know them when you see them.
Mhm.
So they're people who are very passionate about the company brand. They're exquisite storytellers.
Mhm.
They are people that I would consider to have street credibility. So not necessarily
Mhm.
the most senior people in the organization
Mhm.
or the most junior people in the organization, but somewhere in the middle. And how I describe street credibility is really somebody that others look to in times of uncertainty, when they're not sure how to read the environment or the landscape, that they trust these people because they have this influential credibility.
Okay. Yeah,
Yeah.
and I think that again, I think that really clicks with the kind of people that are following along at this tiny empire. That um, these people that have that street credibility and that are really engaged in their organizations. Um, so, what is your advice for somebody who maybe they are that brand ambassador, sort of silently? They maybe haven't been recognized, or they don't feel like the people in their organization understand how much they care, what they have to offer in terms of that idea of ambassadorship. Do you have any advice for them?
Yeah, I have a little anecdote that I'll share with you. So last week I met with one of my ambassadors who happened to be living in New York, and I said, "Why did you sign up for this crazy responsibility to be
Mm-hmm.
a brand ambassador at Intel?" And he said, Sabrina, it's not that, by the way, all the ambassadors, they have day jobs. It's not like they get to do this as their
Mm.
full-time job. So
Okay.
this is because they love the brand and they can't help it. They want
Yep.
to advocate. And I said, "Well, why did you do this? Why did you sign up?" And he said, it's not that you're asking me to do more work, it's that you're giving me meaning to the work that I do.
Mm.
And I thought that was so beautiful and eloquently stated. And really, so the motivation for the ambassadors is because it gives them meaning.
Okay.
So that's the motivation. The motivation for the company or for the brand is what we know is that employees who successfully represent the brand absolutely impact the bottom line and give your company a competitive advantage. The second thing that we know is that companies who have empower and have employee ambassadors, that is among the top 10 factors to accelerate growth in a company.
Hmm.
That's a pretty compelling business
Yeah.
advantage
Yeah.
to really empowering your employees. So you want to give them meaning, you want to give them purpose, and you want to give them a platform to shine.
Okay. So Intel is a gigantic company. You guys have like more than 10 people working for you, right?
Yeah, a few more than 10.
Few
Yeah.
more than that. So, what would you suggest to smaller organizations that may not have the resources that Intel has, but that doesn't? I don't think that precludes them from developing ambassadors. Do you have any thoughts on how a smaller organization might go about sort of installing ambassadors?
Yeah, absolutely. I actually think smaller companies have an advantage that bigger companies don't. I think that smaller companies are more agile,
Hmm.
and that they can move faster and they can experiment and try things that maybe at a large company like Intel would take a lot of buy-in, a lot of senior management
Hmm.
buy-in, and you would have to jump through a lot of hoops, which, by the way, I did. So I do know that for sure. But it's interesting though. Whether it's a small company, a medium company, or a big company, it doesn't really matter. So I think that if you have the right people, what this is about creating a movement.
Hmm.
And you don't need a huge staff to create a movement. What you need, number one, is you need a shared vision and a shared purpose.
Okay.
If you have the people who are your brand advocates aligned behind that shared purpose, they already have the motivation and the intention and the desire to really go grassroots. I
Yep.
actually think these programs are better when they're grassroots versus top down.
Hmm.
So I think small companies are actually better positioned to do this.
Okay. Well, and that sort of brings up you talked about this idea of the shared vision, and I really believe in the importance of the story that a brand is telling from a corporate level. That's got to be mirrored on the front lines. If there's a gap between those two things, the buying public is pretty savvy about that. They understand that,
Yeah.
um, and it seems to me, and maybe you can speak to this, that having people who are advocating for that brand story that are sort of in the trenches, that seems like that would really help that idea spread amongst the other people that are on the front lines in a way that just corporate memos aren't going to get.
Absolutely. It gives your brand so much more authenticity and also transparency
Hmm.
when you have an employee tell the story versus if you have a polished message that comes out from marketing or PR. And not that you wouldn't want those things, you do,
Hmm.
but to have your employees sort of give great depth and authenticity that mirror those messages, so much more powerful.
Yeah.
And by the way, your employees actually have a very different and much more broader reach than your brand does
Hmm.
socially.
Hmm.
And it's interesting, one of the comments that our Intel ambassadors told me, I think a couple of months ago, he said, I really appreciate that our company, in this case it was Intel, really understands the social impact an employee can have.
Hmm.
And that was like, wow, okay, good. I'm glad.
Yeah.
So he really got the power of one single voice and how that could really amplify a brand's message.
Yeah.
So both are important, but when they combine and when you align, so much more powerful.
Sure. Now, you had also related a story. So it's not uncommon for large brands and especially technology brands to, when they're demonstrating a product, to hire people to act as ambassadors for the brand, or to demonstrate the product at a trade show or stuff like that. And you told this great story about how you said, well, why don't we get our ambassadors to do this? And what sort of difference did that make in that demo?
So I sort of like to turn things upside down on their head. It's pretty fun for me. So I didn't want to do marketing, as usual, right? I wanted to challenge the status quo and really mix things up. And we had an opportunity where we had these pop-up experiences where we were introducing our products, or really reintroducing our products to the world.
Hmm.
And what we normally do in a geography, this was all over, is we go hire local demo experts who really, they put on the blue shirt and, they don't say they're from Intel, but, you assume
Hmm.
as a customer that they're from Intel. And I said, you know what? What if? I love starting conversations with what if. What if we were to put ambassadors in that position and have them authentically? I mean, yes, we're going to train them. They're, going to be really smooth and savvy about the technology.
Yeah.
But the difference that they bring to the table and how they change the conversation is they don't just talk about what we do, they talk about why we do it.
Mm.
That's the difference.
Yeah.
And that's something that you can't authentically message and have somebody outside your company do.
Yeah.
Only an employee can do that.
Yeah. Well, and I love that. I because I think that there's value in perfect and polished, and there's also a lot of value in that sort of human element of, like, this might not be the perfect demo in terms of, where every word is exactly right and all that stuff. But the idea that this is a real person who is here because they care about it and they're excited to share that with you, that has a whole different tenor to it than just a perfect presentation. So I
For,
really love that.
for sure.
Well, I was actually speaking yesterday about this idea that a brand can talk about itself, and that means one thing. But hearing a message about a brand from someone you trust is a whole different ball of wax. When my friend tells me that a brand is amazing, that means more to me than when the brand tells me. But I think it's very interesting you bring up this idea of there's also this subset within the brand of the people, the employees and these ambassadors in the brand that sort of they represent the brand, but they're not exactly the brand, and so they carry more weight in terms of their social sharing, as you said. And you had some statistics as well when you spoke in Fairbanks about this idea that brand messages get shared a certain amount, but when employees are sharing about the brand, that has a whole other level of engagement.
Yeah, it absolutely does. And I don't have those stats right in front of me,
Yeah.
but what I do remember is that it was based off of the Edelman Trust Survey,
Uh-huh.
the 2013 Trust Survey, and you're absolutely right. So, it was something like, 41% of people say that they will trust a message coming from an employee
Mm-hmm.
more than they would trust
Yeah.
coming from the CEO. So
Yeah.
you're absolutely right. And their social reach is much greater.
That makes a lot of sense. As a consumer, that makes a lot of sense to me. So
Yeah, yeah.
I pretty much run everything I think about customer service and brand stuff through, well, what do I think as a consumer? How do I think about
Exactly.
brands? Yeah.
And why wouldn't we, right?
Yeah.
What I typically ask my ambassadors to do is to think about how you want somebody to feel. How do you
Mm-hmm.
want to engage them in dialogue? How do you
Yeah.
want them to feel at the end of your conversation? That changes everything. Don't think about, how to articulate your message perfectly.
Yeah.
Think about the quality and the authenticity of the conversation.
Yeah. Amazing. So for people who are out there who own or run organizations, these people are already in your organization. If you're doing any kind of decent hiring, these people exist in your organization, and you got to find them because they're going to be the people who are going to really stump for your brand in a way that the marketing department can't. I love that. I love everything about that. So thank you so much for spending a few minutes with me, Sabrina.
You're welcome. Thank you. It was my pleasure.
I really appreciate it. Have a great day.
Okay, you too.